Welcome everyone to our April webinar. This is our 26th webinar that we've hosted. We've got a cool business growth, business development conversation to have today, talking about expanding mold testing beyond just real estate transactions. Just wait a few moments, wait for some people to join. We have quite a number of registered attendees this webinar, so I want to make sure people get an opportunity to log on. If you have to leave or if you ever register for one of our webinars and can't make it, we do send out the webinar link usually about a day in advance or a day after the webinar, where you can watch it back. And we have on our website all of our previous webinars as well. So if there's any topics that you're interested in revisiting that we've discussed, you can go to our website and look at our past webinars. So today we're going to talk about mold testing beyond real estate transactions. Our primary audience for this webinar is going to be home inspectors, people who are interfacing with home buyers during a real estate transaction, where they do a general home inspection where mold testing and mold inspections are an ancillary service. It's an additional service. This is a discussion on how you may be able to pivot a little bit and offer these as standalone services, and some thoughts and suggestions on how you may be able to make that transition. So we'll get started with the content now. So just a quick agenda, a little bit of intro about us, about Sporecyte. I looked over the attendee list. I recognize a lot of the names. There are a handful of names that I don't recognize. So if this is your first time watching a webinar, welcome. Go over just a quick discussion about who we are as a company and what we do. We'll look into the actual content, which is going to be some common opportunities where you may be able to perform mold inspections, marketing, a marketing position as a healthier lifestyle-based mold testing, and then a section on how to introduce and implement. Obviously, everyone's market and everyone's business is going to be different. So this isn't, the only way to do it. This is just some of the suggestions that we have, some of the things we've seen other people do, some of the things that I've worked through at other companies doing mold and environmental consulting. And then, as always, there'll be some time at the end for questions. If you have a question, feel free to post it in the chat. I'll answer questions as they come up throughout the conversation, throughout the webinar, but if there's time at the end dedicated for questions and answers as well. So I am Dylan McIntosh. I am the Director of Operations here at Sporecyte, a certified industrial hygienist. I've done mold, air quality, all sorts of different types of environmental assessments of residential buildings, commercial and industrial spaces. Been here at TechSite and Sporecyte for the last 4 years, and looking forward to kind of getting to know some of you new faces. So TechSite here is the name of our company. TechSite is the company I work for, the company that provides Sporecyte as a product. We're founded in 2013, and our main focus is machine learning and artificial intelligence, digital microscopy, diagnostic testing for air, liquids, and smearable sample types. And we're used in labs, human, veterinary, and environmental labs all across the world. There's 3 main product lines that we have, 3 verticals here at TechSite. There's Sporecyte, which is our environmental product line. There's TechSite, which is our human analysis, where we have collaboration with Mayo Clinic. And then our veterinary product line is VetScan Images, which is a white labeled solution by Zoetis, one of the largest animal health companies in the world. So here at TechSite, Sporecyte is the name of our laboratory, our product. We are AHA MPAT participant. We have a Texas mold analysis laboratory license, and we are ISO IEC 17025 accredited. If you're looking at this and wondering why we're only licensed in the state of Texas, well, that's the only state that requires or has a licensing program for mold analysis laboratories. In the future, if other states have that requirement, we'll be sure to join them. But until then, Texas is the only specific state that needs a license to operate. Our core product is really simple: $20 a sample, same-day turnaround time, and there's available overnight shipping if you'd like to have the convenience of that. We do air samples for sports wrap cassettes and surface swabs and surface tape samples. So we'll get into the material here. Some common but overlooked testing opportunities. This is where we're going to talk about ways that pretty much any potential home inspection client you may be able to pitch these services. So one thing is an annual checkup. Think of it as a yearly testing similar to an HVAC service checkup. And how to pitch it is generally speaking, you have your furnace and other things assessed typically every year. Would you be interested in having the air that you have in your space tested every year? With mold and air quality, when you're there for a real estate transaction, you're only there for a snapshot in time, and it might not be the best, most opportune time to do the testing. This gives you an opportunity to come back 6 months or a year later, as they've kind of moved in and lived in the home, to reevaluate things like moisture, if there's any leaks or water problems, plumbing issues, roof leaks, anything like that could lead to mold growth, and actually assess the air quality. You could package it with other services as well in a healthy home maintenance plan, depending on the level of experience and equipment you may have. You may want to bundle it with other air quality measurements as well. Like I said, 6 to 12 months after your initial inspection, alternating seasons. When I was doing environmental consulting, we had a number of clients that would alternate. We would come out maybe in the winter one year, in the summer another year, because seasonally buildings in the built environment can be different if you live in areas that have dynamic climates. I'm in the city of Chicago. We have all 4 seasons, extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme humidity, all of it. So when you assess a home in December, it might not have the same situation as it would in August. Another thing that, if you're getting into mold testing and you're getting into offering this as a service to your clients in a real estate transaction, you're really almost there to start offering some other services, where the next step for mold analysis or mold assessment. A common one is a post-renovation or post-remediation assessment. After someone has done substantial efforts, whether there's a known mold problem that's been remediated, or potentially they're doing a rehab of an older home and something is discovered during demolition or renovation process, moisture problems are found or mold problems are found. It's usually good practice to do a post-remediation test, and that's just to make sure that after you've gone through all the work to correct whatever issue is found, you are making sure the space is at an acceptable level. So this could be tied to a number of things, such as roof repairs or replacement, bathroom, kitchen remodels, areas where there may be moisture problems that are hidden that no one can see until you start tearing into the walls. After known plumbing issues or major water damage, a flood, a pipe burst, things like that, where there's major water having an assessment after the immediate issues have been resolved is a good opportunity for you. And one either gives the client peace of mind that they've gone through this and there's no issues remaining, or you uncover a situation that can then be addressed by a remediation professional. We do know a number of inspectors that have they'll partner with restoration companies or contractors to offer these post-project tests. Um, you know, many of you are small business owners, and just like you get a lot of connections with realtors and other professionals, this is another kind of networking that you could consider um, uh, starting to build with these contractors or remediation professionals. When to recommend, it's a case-by-case basis on when to recommend something like this. If it's a remediation project, you're probably going to want to do this test immediately after the remediation company is done, or even before they remove their containment and air scrubbers and things like that, if they have them. Um, Other times, if for example your client calls you and said, "Hey, we had a flood in the basement last week. We got the water out. Everything's dry now. We just want to make sure that there's been no mold growth." A week or so after is a good opportunity. It takes 24 to 48 hours for mold growth to start. So coming out after the fact will allow things to completely dry, and you can check to make sure that there's no residual moisture problems over that time period, and then assess to see if there's been any mold growth. With seasonal testing, I mentioned this briefly in the initial section, because seasons, if you're in a space in an area that has dynamic seasons, changing of seasons, which is probably most of us in the U.S., these seasonal weather shifts can trigger moisture problems and ultimately potential mold growth um, throughout the year in different forms. And I think the last webinar I did, or maybe two webinars ago that I gave back in November, December, we talked about winter situations like condensation, pipe burst, things like that. So there's some seasonal specific situations. So having tests done in different seasons could uncover different situations. And then another thing about these after the transaction assessments, um, you can kind of schedule these things around potential precipitation. Maybe there's a big snow melt that's going to happen. Temperatures are going to heat up, a bunch of snow is going to melt off in the next few days. You can schedule around that, schedule around major precipitation events, rainstorms, that sort of thing. When you're not tied to an inspection period that's a number only a few days long, and you're trying to rush around other schedules, when you can have some flexibility after someone's moved into the property, you could choose a more opportune time. You could bundle this with other things like crawl space checks, things like that. And like I said, every situation is going to be different, but times to recommend it, those changing of seasons, um, times when there's going to be forecasted moisture, that sort of stuff. I've got some questions here that I'll answer. So I have a question asking to talk about how long after remediation work has been done should we go back and test. So generally speaking, if it's a remediation project, I like to come in before containment's been torn down. And that's whenever the remediation contractor says they're ready to be tested. So usually when they're doing a remediation project, there's multiple phases. There's sometimes demolition or cleaning, or both. And then typically after they've done the actual remediation work, whether that's pulling out damaged materials, cleaning non-porous materials, or cleaning semi-porous materials, typically after they're done with that part of the remediation, they will use air scrubbers to make sure that the air has been filtered and cleaned effectively. And most of the time, remediation contractors will like to do that for maybe a day, maybe 2 days or so. And then that's when I can come back prior to build back. So it's the time frame between remediation being complete and containment hasn't been taken down if there is containment, if there isn't containment before build back, so you can get a good visual effect in the areas that were done. So it's kind of dependent on the remediation contractor when you would want to do that. Um, as soon as they're ready for you is longer those air scrubbers work, the more the more things they'll filter out of the air, the more effective they'll be. Uh, so that part, like I said, they usually like a day or two after the project's been completed. They'll continue to run dehumidifiers and air scrubbers. Um, I have a question here that said, I like the idea of proactive testing, but don't we need areas of concern to guide us on where to sample the air? It's not realistic to sample every room in the house. Do we just sample 1 or 2 bathrooms and the kitchen? So yeah, if, for example, you're coming to a property and maybe these individuals are just interested in a seasonal, maybe a biannual check, and they don't have any areas of concern where you would say, okay, there's been water damage in the basement. I'm definitely going to test there. Determining where to test and how to test in situations like that. So you would want to look at the property as a whole. When you're doing this level of service, it's going to typically be a step beyond just taking samples. You're going to be probably using moisture meters or infrared cameras and seeing what kind of dynamics are happening in that property at the time. So maybe you go through that, you don't have any humidity concerns, there's no liquid moisture present, moisture meter, infrared camera screen goes totally dry. Determining where to take those samples is typically a conversation with the occupants. There's a few different ways to kind of frame the conversation. The one I most often would do is I would sample the areas they spend the most time in, so bedrooms, living spaces, things like that. If there was absolutely no signs or evidence of potential issues anywhere, I start to look at the places that they're going to be spending the most time, where they may have the highest level of exposure. Some people may have other thoughts where, maybe they have small children or elderly people in the home that have specific concerns. So you would want to sample in the areas where they're spending the time, or sensitized individuals. Other times it may be, let's sample in the areas where there's the most likelihood that there may be water damage. So like you mentioned, bathrooms, where there's a lot of moisture happening routinely, that sort of thing. All of those are valid thought processes, and usually it's a discussion with the resident on where to best sample. And you don't always have to sample. I've done a number of inspections where the detailed visual infrared camera moisture meter assessment, and I couldn't uncover any situation, any potential situations that needed assessment. So the residents opted to not spend the money on samples. So there's any number of ways that this could be done. There's a lot of different scenarios, but those are some of the more common ones that I've done in my career. So moving back onto the presentation here, another is rental properties. People own rental properties. Maybe they had a nightmare tenant that they just want to make sure that there isn't any residual potential problems in that unit after those people vacate. Maybe you have had a request from a future tenant or a current tenant to do mold testing. Networking with landlords, I had a number of property managers and landlords that would contact me and my previous companies, come out and do assessments. And there's a lot of, it's just another type of networking connections to have, because they have a lot of properties and there's a lot of things that could happen there. But there's a number of things that you could do your services there. And when to recommend, this is typically triggered by a phone call from some of these rental agencies, property managers, um, independent landlords, and things like that. And it's similar to any of the other reasons why someone may call you who owns a home. Water damage problems, just a routine basis. They do it every time before a new tenant moves in. It's kind of a checkup, things like that. Vacation homes, very similar, but there's some unique situations with vacation homes because they sit empty for months at a time. Uh, some of these more minor problems can build to major issues because someone hasn't, you know, not everyone has a person who comes in routinely to check on some of these property things. So minor humidity problems or small leaks can kind of waterfall into bigger problems. So you could have an annual check or a pre-occupancy check, once, maybe it's a lake house or maybe it's a ski house, and there's seasonal aspects, coming out prior to when the residents will be occupying the space. Um, Another networking opportunity here for property managers, cleaning services, things like that to discuss your services and things they may observe and be able to suggest your services. And it's really just there to give peace of mind before someone comes out. And the last thing people want is to show up to their vacation and realize that there was a drain that backed up and there's a little bit of water in a closet for the last 3 months, and that water built the humidity issue that just caused mold to grow all over. I've seen a number of situations very similar to that in homes that aren't occupied year round. So this is shifting to kind of positioning this as a market positioning and kind of a branding type exercise. Healthy and lifestyle based mold testing. There's a number of people who are into um, home wellness, air quality, that sort of thing, where you could bundle these things together with other types of testing. Now, again, this takes more specialized knowledge and more specialized equipment, but it's not out of the realm of possibility for home inspectors. I previously have done training for um, various certifications for air quality, and very routinely I would have students who were home inspectors looking to expand their services, looking to get more information and more training on things like radon, VOCs, particulate matter, um, specialized contaminants like formaldehyde, things like that are things that you could get some additional training on, learn how to measure or sample for those types of contaminants and possibly package them together. Think of it as kind of like going through your annual physical at the doctor's office, a checkup, um, where they aren't going to be doing, you know, X-rays and CT scans and all these advanced diagnostics. They're just going to do a general screen, and based off of what's found, maybe there's recommendations or suggestions. This is something that you could package together. And again, you could recommend these anytime. It could be on a scheduled basis. It could be after an event. Someone had some respiratory distress, and maybe they think it's being caused by something in the home. Maybe there's a seasonal problem, water issue. After major renovations is another big one. When you bring in a lot of new building materials, they'll off gas various VOCs and chemicals. There could be nuisance odors, a lot of dust and debris become airborne as particulate matter that can cause respiratory distress. There's a number of different times you could suggest packages like this. And then this is another instance where uh, you probably, as a home inspector, you see situations like this quite a bit. People, they've got a new baby on the way. Maybe their family's growing. Maybe they have children already, but they've outgrown their current home and need to move into a larger space. Or maybe an aged parent is moving back in, so they're moving um, to a new home. So events like this with the very young or the very old, or um, perhaps somebody had spent a significant time in the hospital and now they're coming back home after a substantial illness. Situations like that are key times when doing air quality evaluations, moisture and mold checks could be really impactful. Making sure that the home is, you're either identifying potential concerns or giving it a clean bill of health, some peace of mind for those people who are maybe more sensitive coming into the home. So, expecting parents, um, caregivers with, elderly individuals or immunocompromised individuals, people recovering from long-term illnesses that are coming back home, things like that. A little tagline there to think about, your loved ones deserve clean air from day one. Um, and like I said, this is more of a marketing type thing, but um, these sorts of opportunities are out there, and you're able to provide these people a really meaningful service. It's not just an add-on for you. It's not just a revenue generator. These are actually really meaningful and important snippets of information that could um, either give peace of mind, like I mentioned, or give them things that need to be improved on, corrected prior to these events happening. So mold exposure is really individualized. So what may be totally okay for me could trigger someone who's sensitized. Um, so I used to get um, a lot of referrals and a lot of um, kind of connections through um, clinics, functional medicine doctors, um, healthcare providers that are, um, not every doctor is kind of thinking about the air quality in the environment at home. It's becoming more common now than it has in the past, but there's usually a handful of functional medicine or wellness type doctors that you could network with to be that service if someone needs it. They're experiencing health effects from um, various other conditions or related to the mold itself, doing an assessment or a home health screening, getting that data that then that person can bring back to their healthcare provider. You or I, we're not going to be the ones, diagnosing or connecting any of the potential issues in the home to direct health effects, because we're not, I don't know about everyone on this call, but I'm not a medical professional, so I can't make those connections. But you could provide the data that someone brings to their doctor to help make connections like that. Asthma and allergy, big triggers for uh, mold can be big triggers for these individuals, whether you're specifically allergic to mold generally or specific types of mold. You can help um, provide these services to individuals like this, educating your clients that you don't always see mold. We can't see into these walls. We can't visually um, always see mold. It's airborne a lot of the times, or it could be hidden or in colonies that are too small for us to really see visually. Um, you know, offering testing in response to seasonal allergies, complaints where they feel like when they're in their home, they're feeling these effects, but as they leave the home or they go to the store or someone else's home, they get relief. Those are things that could be very common situations where you could provide similar services to them. And this could be any time of the year, but your seasonal allergy cycles is a good indicator of when these services might be more prevalent than others. So we'll talk really briefly about this, and then we'll get into just a little bit of time for questions and answers. So how do you let people know that you're going to offer these services? How do you actually implement this kind of thing. So the first step is you have a wide, you speak with dozens of people a month with just general home inspections. So letting them know of your services that you could do during the inspection, letting them know that you can do mold, air quality testing at the time of their inspection, but also letting them know, hey, if you move, you decline it now, but maybe in 6 months, or there's a water leak, you can call me and I could come do it after the fact. Expressing to these individuals that your services aren't just here during the transaction phase. You're here and you can provide these services anytime. Building up marketing, email lists, connections, and outreach after the fact, 6 to 12 months. Just as a reminder of some of these services can be helpful. There's a lot of things going through these people's mind as they're looking to purchase a home, going through the process, moving in, kind of getting settled in. So they're not always going to remember everything. Partnering with real estate agents. So if there's any questions from their clients after they move in, it's just another way that they could direct them to you or your business. Email, social media, other ways that you can educate past clients. If you have a connection base there of email marketing or social media, just similar to what I'm doing here, these webinars. You don't have to do a webinar, but a little newsletter or a social media post. If you see an article about seasonal mold allergies, could be all it takes for someone to realize, hey, maybe I should give them a call to do a test. And then we do have a marketing toolkit on our website that you could utilize some or all the aspects there into your own business. So the one thing I'll talk about here on this slide is you're positioning this as a beneficial service to them. You're not upselling anything. There's no, it's not the entire package at the car dealership. This is meaningful information. And even if there is even a clean bill of health, even if you don't find anything, that is important information. That's the preferred outcome, actually. Certainly, I never wanted to find mold or quality issues. I always preferred to give someone a clean bill of health and the reassurance and peace of mind. But if there is issues, having that information communicated to them is quality information, and it's giving them enough information to make additional decisions. So pricing these things, bundling them together or recurring packages, not a subscription, so to say, but similar to that model where you could come every 6 months or a year. Maybe there's discounts involved with return visits. There's a lot of things you can do to offer these types of services. So we're a few minutes over, but I'll hold a few moments here for some Q&A. If there's any questions in the audience. If you get a question that comes to mind after the fact, send us an email or a message through our website, and we'll get back to you with answers. But like I said, we'll sit here for just another few moments, see if anyone has any questions to ask around today's topic. And if not, we'll always reach out to us with a phone call, an email, or through our website. We have a form that you can send in, and it'll get to us as well. So I do have a question of how do you handle skepticism from clients who say, I already had a mold test when I bought the house? It's a really great question. And the way I handle those sort of statements is usually the passing of time, right? The home inspection is a snapshot in time. And this goes with any building system, anything from your home inspection. That's the snapshot in time from the few hours you were there during that period, or the previous inspector was there. So as I mentioned, seasons change, things happen, buildings change, leaks happen, all these, it's a dynamic system. It's where it was set, 6 months ago could be drastically different today, marginally different today, or not different at all. It's just hard to know. So you can respond to that by just saying, that's a great observation. And even if you had a clean bill of health 6 months ago, 6 years ago, a year, however long the time's been, mold only takes 24 to 48 hours after a moisture event to occur to start to grow. So unless your home inspection was last week, there could have been something over that time, whether temporary or ongoing, that could be causing these potential issues. And as always, it's not always going to be for everybody, and you don't really need to push it very hard if someone is not interested. But that's kind of the wording I would use in those situations. I'm interested in doing VOC testing, but I don't find much online or at Internachi. Do you have any resource suggestions? Yeah, VOC testing is um, really broad category. And if you're interested in getting more professional training, more professional resources, I would look into, depending on your level of experience, how long you've been in the industry, etc. I would look into a training provider that provides training classes for the CIE, the Certified Indoor Environmentalist certification. Those training providers are going to give you a lot of good information on VOC testing. There's a number of different ways to do it. They answered kind of different questions, so that could be probably a 2-hour webinar in itself. So I would look into some training providers. Like I said, CIE, Certified Indoor Environmentalist. It's a designation from the ACAC. And I would look at some of the training providers that teach those classes, or they do have a study guide with some resources if you're looking for more kind of like home study book type information. You'll find some good resources there to look up. We got another questions for recommendations for swab sampling at the air handler plenum, etc. What do you think about that? I've got this question generally quite a bit, and I typically would only sample inside of an HVAC system, whether that's a vent, a duct, anything in the HVAC system. If I see visual signs of water damage, there's what looks to be an evaporated puddle of water, or there is a known event where the HVAC system flooded, or if there's visual discoloration. The reason being is in dust itself is an amalgamation of a lot of different things: hair, skin, insects, mold spores, all sorts of stuff. And inside of this ductwork and on plenums, on vents, you get a buildup of dust, and depending on the housekeeping of the individual, some will have more than others. And if you swab something that's dusty, there's going to be mold in that dust. It's not necessarily growing, but it'll be in there. And how much is there is a function of how long that dust has been there. And the thing about dust is a lot of the times there's a static charge on dust. So if there's dust there, it's easier for more dust to actually build up because they're statically attracted to each other. So typically, if it appears clean, if it appears that there's no discoloration, no potential mold growth or water, a history of water or water damage, I typically haven't sampled in those situations. Obviously, if your client's asking and they say, I understand, you explain that to them. I understand, but I still want to have it tested, then by all means do it. But most often, it's very infrequent that there's actual mold issues inside of HVAC systems. A question was, what is the CIV? Mentioned a question about resources. So CIE, Certified Indoor Environmentalist. That's a designation. There's a series of designations depending on your experience. That's like the main one. There's one called the CRIE and the CIEC, which is the higher step. but it's a designation for building professionals that want to do more purpose air quality focused type testing that you could do. It's an optional professional certification. Whether or not you go through certification or just use their resources for training, get the knowledge base, is up to you. But that would be my recommendation. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up here. If there's any additional questions that filter in that I didn't get to, or if you have questions, as always, reach out to us, and we're happy to answer questions. If you came in late or you had to drop for part of it, you should see an email in your inbox with a recording of this in the next day or so. Thanks for joining, and we look forward to doing many more webinars for you. Thank you.